Let's see if this thing's fucking even working. I don't have much faith in these things because this computer's been acting up. Well, it's up. Alright, yeah, Esau's in a shit pickle because of the fact that, well, they decided Bad Bunny was going to perform the halftime show now. Those that support Chump could have watched Kid Rock at the same time, you know, because, you know, he's the incredible ass kisser of Chump. You know, they could watch that. But they're in an uproar because, of course, like everything else, Bad Bunny performed and, you know, most of the music was in Spanish. Pretty much it was all in Spanish. So Esau didn't like it because, you know, he in an uproar. But not outraged about all the pedophiles that are in power. Not outraged about the Epstein files. Alright, it looks like it's going, but you're going to find out that Great Millstone was right about a lot of things, but here it is. Chump building an ark. This video is a few days old. I'm not going to play all 43 minutes of it, but enough of it, you know. And hey man, you know, prophecy is being unveiled. Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity, and shout out to Yakims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaim this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Brakatam. So I'm going to see if this internet is working after the so-called upgrade, which I would only find out later when my internet was disconnected. See if they actually did improve it, you know, because it's been a few days now since that. So let's hopefully I can actually play these videos without having to do all the snipping stuff. I don't know. It doesn't look good. What a joke. Yeah, this is supposed to be the upgrade, by the way. Fucking video froze. Oh, just what I wanted. This is the upgrade I was looking for. Fuck you!
144,000.
See what I'm saying? Huh. Now you can't even fucking play it. Won't even fucking play.
And the rest of your left out there, shalom to you.
What a piece of shit. Salakia, I'm just going to have to do what I was doing before.
Well.
Okay, so I can still comment on this. I did something else. I decided to download it so I could play it. This is a Pulse Tahar's video. GMS was right. I mean, you know, hey, we've been proven time and time again. It's like, wait, you do have the correct breakdown. That does make a lot of sense. See, here's the thing, though, is that people for years have, our people, for years had a Bible in the house, but they didn't have the proper interpretation. But when the apostles started coming out and teaching on down, we started getting that understanding. It's like, oh, that's what that meant. We have the 100% truth. So, anyhow, Apostle Tahar and Salakia for this, they did not make any improvements. I refuse to buy a new computer. I mean, if it ain't broke, why fix it? And like everything else, though, you know, I refuse to get a Windows 11. I mean, I just don't see the point in it. There's other expenses that I have before even getting another computer, so I'm just not going to get another computer. And I'll admit that this computer is probably about 10 years old or more. It's an Acer. But you know what, though? It's worked for me this whole time, and I have 8 gigs of RAM. So, you know, there shouldn't be any holdup, but it's because Esau keeps on fucking with the internet and just, you know, doing what he does. But nonetheless, though, getting into this. That was my little rave.
Giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Al-Shai, Ba'ashem Al-Kakadash, shalom to the 144,000 and the rest of your elect out there. Shalom to you all. And I'm going to entitle this video, GMS was right, Nero is back.
Yep.
So this is Well, I put in the Trump Arch because it was on CNN. I just saw it not even a minute ago. So I said, let me make a quick video. Let me see where the spirit takes me. I'm going to ask a few questions to the Google. I may even go to the chat. Now, we here at GMS been saying for years that since when he first became, if I'm not mistaken, since he first became president, I myself started calling him Nero. Before that, I was calling himself one of the emperors. Then I pinpointed to the fact that he may very well be Nero, which he has. He fits Nero. If you put a side by side of Nero and Trump, he looks like Trump looks like Nero, and Nero looks like Trump. So let me just go ahead and read these articles. So I typed in. Like I said, we know, even other Israelite groups know that if you believe in reincarnation, if you don't, and you're an Israelite, you really don't understand the scripture. The spirit's not working with you. But we know that there's a reincarnation is mentioned and spoken about in the scriptures. It doesn't mention reincarnation or mention regeneration, which means the same exact thing. There's two ways of saying reincarnation. Say reincarnation or regeneration. And we here at GMS been saying, starting with myself, that this individual is Nero coming back. Reincarnation is real. He's doing exactly what. Do some research on Nero, and then you already know how Trump rose. That's Nero. Now I could have said he's Caligula. He's Caligula, or he's some of them say he's Julius. He's not Julius. He doesn't fit Julius Caesar. We believe that was Clinton. We strongly believe and narrowed it down to Nero. Nero was known for his hatred of the Christians and the Jews. Nero signed off on the death of the apostles. John was spared for spiritual reasons. The Most High didn't want John to be put to death because Yahweh B'Shem had to give him the book of Revelation. Although he has his own books, 1 John, 2 John, St. John. And the book of Revelation. So here we go. Let's see where we're going to go with this. Trump says he wants proposed arch to be world's biggest. Now you can see this picture right here. This is Washington, D.C. From a certain vantage point. You can see how it looks like Rome. Look at it, he's speaking. It got an eagle. The symbol, the animalistic symbol of Rome is the eagle. Here it is again. So it says, Trump says he wants proposed arch to be world's biggest. See, he's a legend in his own mind. Fox News, White House fires back at critics calling Trump's massive arch too big. And he's talking about wasteful spending. That's wasteful spending. And these arches are called honorary arches or triumphal arch. If you defeated the enemy, they make an arch on Titus. Titus' younger brother, Domitian, he erected an ark to commemorate the fact that that his brother Titus destroyed conquered the Yahweh. And it really wasn't him. It was Alexander. What's this guy's name? I remember the name Alexander. I'll get the name in a minute. I'll give you the name and it'll come back to me. He was a Jake. And he was raised as an Israelite. And so let me continue to read. Just trying to get the name back in my head. Anyway, it says in the ABC News, and this is as of 1 day ago. The other two articles were 2 days ago. This is new news. ABC News, Trump says Washington has waited. Alexander Tiberius Alexander, I'll give you the rest of his name in a minute. There's 3 names. Trump says Washington has waited 200 years for the arch he wants to be built, not quite. People.com. Donald Trump wants his D.C. Triumphal Arch to be the biggest one of all. You know what I'm going to do? Let me do this. The Trump Arch. Did Nero get an arch?
I believe he did.
For a fact that Titus did. This is what I want. The arch that was built for Titus is called a honorary arch. Okay, Trump says Washington has waited 200 years for the arch he wants to build. Not quite. President Donald Trump wants to build a massive arch near the Lincoln Memorial. Okay, let me come back over here. Bring this back. And we speak about Rome, we go into the history of Rome a lot, simply because this is Rome all over again.
The second beast, also known as. Which means second empire, pretty much. Because beast means empire when dealing with these scriptures.
Let me just go to Triumphal Arch and let's look that up. If you do not believe in the concept of reincarnation in a biblical sense, then the Spirit's not dealing with you. So vocab, Spirit's not dealing with you.
Yeah.
God logic, Spirit's not dealing with you. Abu Kamar, Spirit's not dealing with you. You got these Yah Israelite groups, whether I don't think they believe in reincarnation. So you really don't know the scripture. Let me go meaning. A triumphal arch is a monumental freestanding archway built to commemorate significant military victories. Well, this guy bragged that he stopped 8 wars, but he started another 5. However, imperial accession or major public achievements, which the prices still go up. People, and even his base, the red hat people, they don't like him, and he killed himself over that. So maybe he might be thinking about doing that. Originating in ancient Rome. Why would he call for an arch? Because this is Rome all over again. These decorative stone structures often feature intricate reliefs, sculptures. For example, the Triumphal Arch of Titus, you had sculptures. What did they use? They used the charagma and the carax, the chiseling. And what they did was they showed how they raided the temple and raided the treasury. And there was gold and silver. Money, true, real money is gold and silver. Why did the treasury have so much gold and silver? Because that's a way that you pay your tithes and offerings. You got Nate talking about, oh, they didn't use money. What about the woman that gave her last pence?
Yeah, exactly. Real money, not this notes.
Decorative stone structures often feature intricate reliefs, sculptures. They had them take the menorah, all the holy things, and that's the fulfillment of when Yahushua told the believers, his disciples, he said, when you see the abomination that maketh desolate enter into the holy place, then flee ye into the mountains.
Yep, which
So
are the Saharas.
They knew who the abomination of desolation is. And I'm going to look that up. I'll probably go to Google, just put those two words in there. The abomination that maketh desolate. Or what does abomination that maketh desolate means? I'll go to the actual scripture. It says, typically spanning roads to symbolize power and honor individuals or events. Let me do this here. I just want to do something. I want to see if they erected a arch for Nero of Nero. They erected an arch for George Washington. He was president and he was emperor, and I believe that George Washington was Nero. Triumphal of Nero. Let's see what comes up. Let's see if they built him an arch.
Pretty sure of it. I mean, very well-known history.
Arch of Nero. Arcus Neronis was a lost Roman triumphal arch erected in Rome between 58 and 62 AD, of course, to commemorate Gaius Demetrius, whatever, victory in, okay, this is not Nero's arch. It says Arch of Nero. Arch of Nero, reading right here. Arch of Nero is now lost triumphal arch dedicated to the Roman Emperor Nero that was located in Rome, Italy. The arch was erected in the years between 58 and 62 and was designed to commemorate victories won by, okay, so this guy was a general, but the honor went to the emperor at that time. Yeah, you get that arch when you conquer an enemy. Oh, we're going to build you an arch. Let me see. A history. A history of triumphal arches. Triumphal arches are monumental, freestanding, and usually vaulted archways originated in ancient Rome to celebrate significant victories and leaders. Initially commissioned by the Senate, these structures serve as a public propaganda displaying spoils, right? Because when you take the enemy over, you take their riches. And the same thing we're going to do.
Like Venezuela.
Daniel 7, the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and even forever and forever. And those saints are Israelites.
Yep.
Not the body of believers. Oh, it's a bunch of different Christians.
Doesn't make sense, does it?
And statues. Key example includes the Arch of Titus, Arch of Septimius Severus, which was a Jake. He wasn't the first Jake to rule. The first Jake to rule was a man by the name of Nerva. That was in 96 AD. An Arch of Constantine. So Jake got into that too. We want an arch too, because they got it from the Romans. And then you got images. Let me open this up. So this is further proof that Trump is definitely one of those Caesars, and he has to be Nero. He has to be Nero. Nero was known for his deep, dark hatred for the Christians and the Jews. And by the way, Christians were not, it was not a religion. It was the people. It was Israelites that accepted the Christ. Any Israelite or Jew that accepted and followed the Messiah, they called them Christians, or they called them Mashiachim, which is Messiahites. Now the word Messiah in the Latin, the Hebrew word means chosen, and the Latin and the Greek is Christos. So there you go.
So, like everything else, though, as you can see, downloading the video worked. And, like everything else, though, you catch the rest of Apostle Tahar's video on his own channel, but I just wanted to get into that a little bit. So we're in that regeneration now, where we wake up as to who we are. We also wake up as to who they are. That, yes, indeed, the Roman Empire, or Edomites, were, in fact, because there's this whole book, Elder Brother Malcolm has it, called Who is Esau Edom? And it all goes back to Rome, you know. And we're in that regeneration now, you know. We're discovering who we are. We definitely know who Esau is, too. You know, so like everything else, though, you know, we're seeing it. And, again, you know, Esau's got himself in a shit pickle over this Bad Bunny halftime show. Versus Turning Point USA, alternative highlights a divided nation. Because a lot of people felt that, okay, I'm just going to switch over to Kid Rock, you know, who sucks Trump's dick, you know. He just, you know, yeah, he'll talk about how bad the Democrats are, you know. He did a whole thing against Biden, but yet at the same time will worship Trump when Trump is just as bad, if not worse, than Biden ever was. So Biden was a Sleepy Joe, right? He was a pedophile too, don't get me wrong. He was a pedophile too, but just, you know, either way, you know, they had themselves an uproar because, again, last night was the biggest television event of the year, the Super Bowl. Yet the NFL decided that Puerto Rican native Bad Bunny, which is obviously the tribe of Ephraim, was the best fit for the halftime show, performing his entire set in Spanish and leaving tens of millions of English-speaking Edomites in the dark. Some even tuned in to an alternative half show produced by Turning Point USA, which was the one with Kid Rock. This big question is why NFL forced Edomites to watch the entire Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show in Spanish when English is the official language. Well, yeah, and it was a good performance. I saw this, so his performance was pretty good. Yeah, yeah, see, there's no even sound. It won't even let you have sound. because of snippets. But nonetheless, though, it was an excellent show. As the Latin trap artist performed, some viewers reached for translator apps on their phones to understand why the lyrics, while others switched to the Turning Point USA, which featured Kid Rock, Lee Brice, so-called white people's fucking broadcast. Broadcasts appeared to be popular, drawing an estimated 10 million viewers. So, like everything else, though, it just goes to show, though, that there's a difference, and that line's been drawn. This, why can't we all just get along thing is starting to disappear. And Esau's true hatred is coming out. Russia will not launch attack against Europe, but will respond forcefully if struck. Because like everything else, though, this tensions really started building when they started using long-range bombers, giving Ukraine long-range bombers, and Russia being hit. Russia's still been pretty humble. Went after Kiev positions and everything after that, but yet at the same time never struck Europe, even though it was those Europe nations, aka NATO members, that were giving Ukraine long-range weapons. I remember that because just right as Sleepy Joe went out, they were giving them long-range weapons, yet Russia did not hit any NATO countries. Russia has no intention of launching military attack against Europe. Sergei Lavrov said, warning, however, Moscow would respond decisively to any military action. We have no intention of attacking Europe, Lavrov said, adding that there is no reason to do so. If Europe acts on its threats to prepare war against us and initiates an attack against the Russian Federation, it will face a full-fledged military response from our side, with all available military capabilities. And you already know about those Reznik missiles. Russia has in the past blamed the EU for creating obstacles and even sabotaging the peace process instead of paving way to a permanent peace in Ukraine. But like everything else, though, the EU has been divided over this. Trump takes a different approach on it than Sleepy Joe did. But nonetheless, though, you can see that, they're preparing for war, but this is not where the war is going to be, even though it is a world war. But most of all, though, Putin warns Trump about Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. And that's another thing is that, Trump did say that, he would send them Tomahawk cruise missiles, because it's something that Ukraine asked for. And like everything else, though, I remember when Trump was running for president, this event took place in between, Biden and him not even visiting the people, but this was a so-called, I believe that this was done on purpose, but nonetheless, though, this event, Biden never went there to look at the wreckage, while Trump did. See, this got him in also, just on this alone. 3 years have passed since Norfolk Southern freight train carrying hazardous chemicals derailed in East Palestine, as eastern Ohio village near Pennsylvania border. NIH Research Hub offers the people of East Palestine a pathway to clear answers about their health they deserve. And it was a chemical warfare. But you can't accuse the U.S. of using weapons of mass destruction or even using chemical agents, but you can accuse Syria of it, right? The so-called sarin gas, but yet this thing leaked everywhere. But there was no call for action against Babylon for poisoning its own people. So you can see how hypocritical the so-called Assad is gassing his own people, which that was just the white helmets making up shit just as the reasons to bomb Syria. Just the hypocrites, Esau Edom, man, just it never ceases to amaze me how much people suck Donald Trump's dick, and just believe everything he says. Oh, he ain't starting no wars. Yeah, he started 5 more while pretending to end 2 others, which, by the way, the Israeli state hasn't honored the commitments, and neither has Ukraine. He said that he's getting a deal with Ukraine. He ain't even gotten a deal with Ukraine to stop their shit. UNICEF says at least 20 Sudanese children killed in January. So like everything else though, Babylon the Great is having their way in Sudan as well, which is part of Ethiopia when you look at where it is in the scriptures. At least 20 Sudanese children were killed in January, most of them in the Kordon and Darfur regions in Western Sudan. Deaths were cited in a report published by the UN's Children's Agency addressing the situation of children across the nation. In Sudan, January 2026, at least 20 children were killed, most of them killed in the Kordofan and Darfur states. Agency warned that millions of children in Sudan require life-saving assistance protection and the restoration of essential services as fighting continues to devastate large parts of the country. So, like everything else, though, the U.S. has been supplying weapons, to be used in this war, by saying, oh, they're targeting children, so we got to get involved, and guys are fighting ISIS, etc. But really, truly, though, can't play the hero, no matter what. Their hands are bloodied. Israeli state imposes de facto annexation with sweeping West Bank policy change. New regulations, including expanded Israeli authority in Area A, including the Hebron Mosque in Hebron. Israeli government on Sunday approved sweeping changes to the land registration and civil control in the occupied West Bank. In a joint statement, they said the measures would remove legal barriers on Israeli terrorists and accelerate settlement development. Koch said the aim is to give terrorists equal legal civil rights. You mean just take over land that doesn't even fucking belong to you, right? Oh, buddy, now they stay at home and just desires hell, especially Lisa Flock. Well, Smoosh said the move would normalize life in the West Bank and vowed to continue to kill the idea of a Palestinian state. So like everything else, though, this is ISIL, Israeli State in Levant, which is that whole region. And that's where this war is going to be fought. It's going to be fought in the Levant, the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is mostly Syria in that area, which would include all the areas surrounding it, wouldn't it? No safe place. Another deadly day in Gaza as Israeli terrorists violate the ceasefire. Since the alleged ceasefire took effect, which everybody knows it's a joke, more than 529 Palestinians have been killed and 1,462 wounded by Israeli terrorists. Early Wednesday morning, the Gaza Strip was once again engulfed in violence as Israeli airstrikes and artillery fire killed at least 21 Palestinians. The attacks targeted tents sheltering displaced families and residential buildings in Gaza City and Khan Yunis, raising serious doubts about the durability of the ceasefire agreement. There isn't one. There isn't one at all. There is no safe place when you're dealing with Amalek. U.S. pressure to disarm Hezbollah is pushing Lebanon to the brink. Washington continues to demand the movement's disarmament across the entire country, a move that will trigger civil war. Because like everything else, though, disarming Hezbollah means that they have no stability whatsoever. Destabilize Lebanon so Israeli state can have their way. Issue of Hezbollah's total disarmament demanded by Israeli state and the U.S., which the U.S. controls the Israeli state, and the Israeli state controls the U.S. Why? Because these same Amalekites control Babylon. That's how it works. Lebanese authorities officially stated that Hezbollah no longer maintains any military presence between the Litani River and the border area. But, you see, like everything else, though, it's a pretext to continue the war. But both the U.S. and Israeli state consider this insufficient and continue to demand the movement's disarmament across the entire country. They've already been stripped. Like everything else, though, just it's continued reason. And we'll go more into this. Let's see if it fucking plays.
Although Lebanon and Israel entered into a ceasefire nearly 1 year ago, in the south of Lebanon, the war never stopped. Israeli attacks and bombardments continue to terrorize residents of the south every day. And when it is not sending its missiles, Israel is deploying its drones, not just for the purposes of surveillance, but as a tool to to enforce its occupation of southern Lebanon. Several incidents have been reported of drones conducting search operations and interacting directly with residents. This video, posted by a young man last summer, showed a drone hovering closely above him and following him as he exercised outdoors and visited his brother's grave. One incident even saw a drone broadcasting a message on loudspeakers, accusing a man of collaborating with Hezbollah and urging residents to expel him.
كنت قاعد بالبيت انا والعائله وعم درس اولادي وهيك وصاروا رفقاتي يبعثوا لي فيديوهات انه في درون عم تقول اسمك وهيك صاروا الجيران يهربوا من البنايه يفزعوا يعني فاولادي صاروا يهجموا على التليفون انه بركي ضربوا على التليفون صاروا يبكوا يقولوا لي كب التليفون وهيك يعني فصار في جو يعني رعب بالبيت كثير.
Since that fateful October Sunday, Tariq's family has been staying with relatives in the neighboring town. Out of fear of Israel's threats, he has moved to Beirut, hoping for the storm to pass.
فالوضع يعني مثل ما انك شايفه يعني على طول قلق وخوف وسيارات وضرب ما في هدوء يعني خاصه نحن النازحين يعني من القرى الحدوديه بعد ما يعني الحرب ما خلصت نحن عندنا من سنتين بعدنا عايشين بالحرب يعني.
You can tell though that the Israeli state's not going to give up. He further warned undermining Lebanon's stability and the resistance and essential component of the country will affect everyone. No one will be spared. Well, of course not, because it's a ethnic cleansing. That's what Netanyahu and Donald Trump, aka Nero, wants to do. Multiple attacks reported today against southern and eastern Lebanon. Oh, that shouldn't be surprising. Today, multiple Israeli attacks were reported against various sites in southern and eastern Lebanon. Mountains around Hermel, and in particular being hit heavily through exactly what is being targeted, unclear. Beyond Israeli state generally saying it's attacking Hezbollah infrastructure. Well, you saw what they did in Syria after Bashar al-Assad was taken out. Was removed. Today's strikes include 2 air raids against Manhoura and 1 against Hasba district, and also the strikes in the mountains near Hamal. Given the 50 raids per month high, today is well above the usual pace, and keeping the Israeli state's constant threats for further escalation. IDF claimed that the various strikes hit underground Hezbollah weapons storage, which provide no evidence whatsoever, right? They offer no evidence, as usual, that any sites contain weapons. Well, they just have their way. Nobody holds them accountable, right? Netanyahu to meet Trump on Wednesday as the Israeli state pushes for Iran war. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will meet President Trump at the White House Wednesday as the Israeli state is pushing for total war against Iran following talks between U.S. and Iranian officials in Amman last Friday. In a statement of the upcoming meeting, Netanyahu's office said that negotiations with Iran must include limitations on ballistic missiles and halting of the support of the Iranian axis. The demand that Iran must place limits on its missiles, it's a bunch of shit. And nonetheless, though, they suck each other off, giving head. And like everything else, though, this video goes more into it, and I'm going to play this from the VLC player because I don't trust the connection. This thing sucks, and like everything else, though, I'm not buying another computer. So, either way, though, an impending attack is still coming against Iran.
Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdsson of World Alternative Media here, and we have to talk about Iran because, for a long time it was all you heard in the news, and now we're not hearing much about it, but there's a lot of stuff happening. And a lot of questions we need to be asking, because I think it goes without saying there's a very good chance we will see war with Iran this year. And again, not to sound like some fearmonger here, but like the reality says everything points to this. The ramp up they did, the normalization they have made, and now they're just putting us in a place where we're just sitting on our hands waiting to see what happens. The Cradle.co reports Washington downs Iranian drone aggressively approaching USS Lincoln. Now, of course, they sent the USS Lincoln, which multiple major Pentagon officials, as well as the Kushners, have landed on. And, of course, this is a major, major move signifying a war with Iran. Again, every major conflict that we've seen in the past with major countries over the last 100 or so years has started on water. From the Lusitania to the Gulf of Tonkin incident to the attempt on the USS Liberty, it always starts on water. Can't forget Pearl Harbor. So we're going to go into what is actually going on with Iran today, and we're also going to react for the first time, because I haven't seen this yet, but I'm interested in hearing what is actually said. Video by Matt Gaetz and Max Blumenthal talking about Israel's Mossad, their role in manipulating the protests in Iran, which they say have led to tens of thousands of deaths. Again, I want to make it abundantly clear. Unfortunately, I have to, because I have to keep rephrasing this and telling people over and over again. Being against nation building and regime change and CIA and Mossad control over countries, the same people that rape and murder children, them controlling countries, being against that does not automatically mean that I like the Iranian regime and I like the people in power in the government there. I shouldn't have to say that. Just because I am against Maduro and the fact that he is a communist scumbag does not mean that therefore I want the CIA to run Venezuela. Again, should not have to be said. Two wrongs don't make a right. And, we've learned that, at the age of 3. I did interviews with G. Edward Griffin on this, as well as Sam Tripoli on this issue as well, which you can check out on my channel. But before we get into what exactly is happening in Iran and play this 9-minute video of Max Blumenthal and Matt Gaetz, which I'm looking forward to breaking down with all of you, before we get into this, I urge people to check that. I urge people to go and check that they've attacked another country is in response to Israel and the United States. And on top of that, they didn't strike the United States on their own land. They attacked in Qatar. So there's a massive amount of restraint there. And for the virtue signaling people in the United States about how we need to have peace on earth, the United States has bombed 100 countries, has gone to war with 100 countries, more than that, in the last 100 years. And talking about, nuclear capabilities in Iran, who was the only country that allegedly dropped nuclear bombs on another country in the last 100 years since the inception of nuclear bombs? And Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that's the U.S. government. At least that is a claim. Some people claim that there's no such thing as nukes. I don't know. I say if they can make a small fusion explosion on a scale of, the size of a Tic Tac, and they could do it at the size of, a cloud chamber or one room, they surely can do it on a larger scale. I'm not sure if they're actually doing that or using it as fear, but nonetheless, it's possible. And I've seen insane footage and seen people who have witnessed this stuff as well. I don't know. I'm not going to get into the arguments around that because I would be lying to say that I know exactly how all that works. But one thing I know is when they're using this as an excuse, as a pretext to go to war with Iran, which since the 90s, Benjamin Netanyahu said, Iran's months away from getting nuclear weapons. And then in the weeks leading up to the attack in June of 2025, they say, they're weeks away from getting a nuclear weapon. And then, boom, they attack them, and then they're like, okay, now they're months away from having nuclear weapons again. And on top of that, we have the fact that, Benjamin Netanyahu has pushed this stuff before. The Iraq War, weapons of mass destruction. The similarities are incredibly blatant, and when people say, people are rising up in Iran against their government, that might be true to a great extent, but to what extent really? And we're going to go into that a bit later. But regardless, people rose up against Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And speaking of Iraq, for people that say it's not alike at all, even though Trump recently said that, but of course, whatever, I guess, there are thousands of Iraqis volunteering to defend Iran against a U.S. attack. The Iraqis pledged to defend both their country and Iran as tensions with the U.S. escalate. Again, to those who don't see any similarities, you're blinding yourself with confirmation bias to your political team. And it's a team sport, and it's all BS. The U.S. military said on 3rd February that it shot down an Iranian drone that approached its aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, in the Arabian Sea. The unmanned aircraft aggressively approached the carrier, said CENTCOM spokesman Tim Hawkins. And I quote, the Iranian Shahed 139 drone continued to fly towards the ship despite de-escalatory measures taken by U.S. forces operating in international waters. He went on to say, adding that an F-35C Lightning II shot it down. And I quote, no American service members were harmed during the incident and no U.S. equipment was damaged. Okay, but again, as I've said before, my friends, it always starts in the sea. because less people witness things in the sea, don't they? From the Lusitania, sinking of Lusitania to World War I, or Pearl Harbor to World War II, or the Gulf of Tonkin incident to the Vietnam War. And we also saw the Gulf of Oman incident, which started a lot of what we see with Iran years ago, which I interviewed Dr. Ron Paul on. Oh, man, I think that was freaking like 7 or 8 years ago. Anyway, it always starts in the water. Now, Iran says missile programs are it's never negotiable with the U.S. in talks with the U.S. Comments follow reports that Iran and U.S. agree to limit discussions to nuclear program. Well, why should Iran kowtow to the U.S. at this point, considering what's happening? Now, again, I'm using political phrasing here. I shouldn't, because generally speaking, what we're dealing with is a scripted measure that was written long ago, and it's a Babylonian cult, as Sam Tripoli mentioned.
I said Babylon.
The Greater Israel Project, and something that the seven-country agenda, which General Wesley Clark talked about back in the 90s. It's all coming to fruition today. Now, EndOfTheAmericanDream.com reports Iran's brand new ballistic missiles are so incredibly fast that they can reach Israel in about 10 minutes. So, a lot of this surrounds the fear, but also the reality that Iran is actually quite a powerful country, much more so than Iraq was. And Iraq was a pretty powerful country at its time. Same with Libya, before the U.S. devastated the region, killing millions of people, by the way, in Iraq, and, of course, leaving a power sink for years to come after.
Same with Libya, too.
I care not about the excuse. I am looking at the reality that we are facing down another war-type doomsday scenario in the Middle East that would devastate humanity, destroy, not just kill millions of people, also destroy economies worldwide while propping up the major arms manufacturers, as well as creating the excuse to bring in the technocracy that they want. The global technocracy with digital IDs under emergency orders, which the UN says in a time of war, they can do. They can push forward in almost every major country in the world.
See, in a time of war.
Forces into that new system.
And you show your wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places. We're in that time period now. So they can issue the mandate for, under the guise of digital ID, etc., that everybody has to be identified by this implant. They have to have an implantable device so they can track and trace their every move, which is ultimately what they wanted, and this Third World War comes. Match it up to the scriptures perfectly. You see where we're at, and like everything else, though. I figured out an alternative way to get this, right? Well, fully prepared. Iran not after initiating regional war. Yeah, they're prepared to defend themselves, but they're not looking for a regional war, unlike what the propaganda says over here. While we are prepared, we have no intentions of starting a war in the region, Major General Mousavi said on Sunday, addressing a group of Iranian commanders and servicemen of the Army's Air Force and Air Defense Force during a ceremony on the occasion of the Iranian Air Force Day. He underlined that Iran enjoys both prowess and necessary preparation for a long-term war with the U.S. It yet welcomes logistical openings for negotiations without unreasonable preconditions, the general said. Like everything else, though, they already know that they have a wicked enemy and that their enemy is going to attack them anyways. General Mousavi said the Iranian nation has witnessed U.S. atrocities, treacheries, deceptions, bullying, greed, domination, seeking, and inhumane desire for swallowing Iran over the past 47 years. All these have made this generation more serious, determined, capable, and resolute in standing up against this wicked enemy, he noted. Like everything else, though, if they have to defend themselves, they will. And they'll have the support. And like everything else, the article that he read, it's right here. Thousands of Iraqis volunteered to defend Iran against U.S. attack. Thousands of Iraqis signed a pledge to help defend Iran in the event of a U.S. attack against the Islamic Republic. According to the statement, almost 50, or at least 5,000 people in Iraq, in just one province, though, Diyala province, gathered together to declare their intent to defend both Iraq and its eastern neighbor, as well as Iran-backed armed groups, without any compensation. Meaning that, okay, groups working in the interests of Iran, such as, we announce the readiness to volunteer our support for security forces, the Popular Mobilization Forces in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we categorically reject American intervention in the Islamic Republic, the statement read. Because they know what American intervention looks like. Iraq has been, destroyed, and pretty much, though, has been the puppet of the U.S. for a long time because of what the U.S. was able to do to Saddam Hussein to remove him. Trump has no clear goals for Iran as nuclear talks resume. U.S. President Trump's administration have no clear guidance on what Washington hopes to accomplish in any potential attack against Iran. Well, it's because Netanyahu told him to. Trump left open the possibility of pursuing regime change in Iran, report says, but adds that the president has not yet settled on precisely what his objectives for any possible military action would be. Yet new reports in Western media said the U.S., despite repeatedly threatening Iran hitting a regime change and threatening the life of the country's supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini, has not been able to devise a plan decisive enough to prevent a massive regional escalation. As a result, the U.S. military is being forced to muster as many additional air defenses as possible. So, hey, preparing for war. And like everything else, so I got one more here. And of course, it's from the Stu Peters network. And like everything else, though, he has a lot of insights. But before I do that, it tells you what's going to happen and where they're going to gather. Can't reiterate these scriptures enough, because everything's going to be found out, at the very end of it. But, first and foremost, you got to know where the Valley of Jehoshaphat is. And once you know that, then you'll figure out, okay, all the surrounding countries, so you got to remember, it says the surrounding countries in these scriptures, right? In Joel chapter 3, verse 2, I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And that is everybody that took place in that. Verse 9. Proclaim this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, for there I will set to judge all the heathen round about. Multitudes, multitudes in the Valley of Decision, for the day of the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is near in the Valley of Decision. And ultimately, this is where the nuclear war begins, which it also gives you clues in Jeremiah chapter 49, Isaiah chapter 17, that Damascus is the city that turns into a ruinous heap, starting World War III. And like everything else, though, you see that indeed Damascus is the central area where this is a city name that's going to be destroyed. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And that's by way of that nuclear destruction. So we know that nuclear war is imminent, and in the midst of a nuclear war, they can push their agenda. So, like everything else, though, we see where this is. So I'm going to play one more here by the Stu Peters Network, who goes into these things. Thus, even the introduction is talking about them 1948ers, these Amalekites that pretend to be Jews, right?
And right now his minions are trying to run this country.
The German nation does not wish its interests to be determined and controlled by any foreign nation. France to the French, England to the English, America to the Americans, and Germany to the Germans. We are resolved to prevent
Yep, these small hats control everything. The least the flock shall draw them out. Shalom, Barak the Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Brakatam.
Perhaps the most shocking and terrifying events in U.S. history.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli.
I could see that they were like happy. Something very strange.
They have to get the blessings of this country before they can swear an oath to our Constitution. They won't get any spotlight in the Zionist-funded media. And one of the scariest things in the world is that nobody is willing to admit that. Nobody wants to have that conversation. Why is our army not arresting pedophiles who put their little kids' faces during the whole month of June?
Everybody do, take me, don't just like a fight.
sensitive subject that nobody wants us to talk about, and I think it's pretty obvious that's something that we should be talking about.
That those who will control the world, they don't really care about us.
They say it in their own words, the Jews will control the world. Very little subjective commentary in that teaser for the upcoming film Occupied. Head on over to occupiedfilm.com to get early access to that game changer. So Iran has officially struck Israel by launching what Fox News tells us is at least 180 missiles into that country, sending them crashing through the Iron Dome, hitting their targets, which, unlike when Israel does this, were actually military targets. And now we're hearing all about how this is one of the biggest, baddest, most anti-Semitic war crimes to ever be committed in all of human history. And how anyone who doesn't think so is for the terrorists. But let's be honest for a minute. Let's just put all of this into context. Iran sent a volley of missiles to a country that's been launching every munition known to man at almost the entire Middle East, including Iran, for decades. Israel, with their from America, have been poking and prodding Iran for years. The American war empire, the military-industrial complex, whose front lines in Israel. This is like a bully who torments another kid on the playground every single day and then tells the teacher that he's the victim when the other kid finally stands up to him and punches him right in the suckers.
I remember growing up and going
Israel
to
has
school.
spent the past year begging Iran
How
to get
bad it
involved
was.
in their fake war. They want to fight Iran so bad that now they've expanded the war into Lebanon. They started killing Iranian generals, government officials, really any Iranian that they can find. And that's not limited to Lebanon. They're also launching missiles and sending drone strikes into Iran, into sovereign Iranian territory. They've been doing this for months, running targeted assassinations of Iranian government officials and their allies, taking a whole lot of civilians with them. And it never had to be this way. But it is, because the world has been captured by this Zionist empire of lies, this synagogue of Satan. It doesn't just control our foreign policy here in the United States, but which controls our entire perception of reality altogether. There are millions of brainwashed, borderline retarded, fake, lukewarm Christian Americans right now clamoring, jumping up and down, worshiping Israel, and telling us that if we don't do something, Iran will do another Holocaust. Because they launched a few missiles in response to a full year of hardcore Israeli warmongering and sneak attacks on Iranian soil. And that's a very important thing to remember, by the way. This was a defensive strike on behalf of Iran. This wasn't some kind of an unprovoked invasion like Israel did to Gaza, like they're doing now to Lebanon, and prepping to do to Syria and Iraq, with American help, of course. No, this was self-defense. Every person, every country on earth has a right to self-defense. Self-defense isn't reserved for Israel and its minions. But America as a whole has become so captured, so brainwashed, that people who call themselves patriots would rather defend Israel than defend our own borders. And borders are a very important aspect of this entire situation because Israel's borders are completely fake. They were drawn on a map by a bunch of Zionist Jewish warlords and their captured Shabbos goys in 1948 and have been redrawn several times since as Israel has expanded its territory down the barrel of an American-made gun. They haven't just been on the warpath for a year either. They've been on the warpath for a century. Long before Israel was even founded in 1948, Jews were running around the desert, killing Muslims, killing Christians, killing the British soldiers who were overseeing Palestine. And they never stopped. Israel is always on the warpath, be it openly or covertly or both. And it's only getting worse. They're only getting more openly aggressive, more openly murderous and genocidal because the United States and our completely and totally fake occupied federal government have written them a blank check to do so. But things are changing. And while millions of Americans still worship Israel, millions more are turning against Israel. There's a mass awakening going on, and the Jew-run corporate media and our Jew-run government are doing everything that they possibly can to stop it. But you see, we see Israel for what it is. And what it is a fake, illegitimate, homosexual nation state that was built on lies to give Jews the right to steal and to rape and to kill whoever they want. And we're not going to send our kids, we're not going to send ourselves to go and die for a bunch of Jews. David Miller's been following the situation very closely for quite some time now. We're interested in his perspective on this, and he joins us now. David, what say you?
Well, this is, of course, as you say, a defensive response by Iran, and as you say, it has targeted military targets. It looks like the Mossad headquarters has been destroyed. It looks like the main airbase in the Nakab Desert has been destroyed, where the few squadrons of stealth fighters, supplied, of course, by the US, take off daily to raid and bomb Gaza or Lebanon. That airfield has been destroyed. It's not clear how many or if any of the stealth bombers themselves have been destroyed. This is a major defensive response by Iran to the assassinations of Ismail Haniyeh, of Hamas, of course, and also of Hassan Nasrallah, of Hezbollah, and as you said, the Iranian general. It's more than that. It's more than a response. It's an attempt to degrade the military capability of the Zionist war machine. And in that respect, it has done a very good job. Now, I heard you say that people are saying this is the biggest anti-Semitic crime for ages. I've also seen the Zionists saying, oh, well, this wasn't a very good attack at all, it didn't kill anybody. And of course, that's the distinction, isn't it?
And like everything else, though, they had to run it during the Zionist Super Bowl. I call it the Zionist. I didn't even fucking watch the football game because it's so fucking disgusting anyways. I mean, anybody that knows about the Seattle Seahawks knows that they fucking cheat anyways. It's a fucking rigged game. I like to, you know, for edification's sake, like to see the Super Bowl commercials, and I couldn't help but see, you know, oh, anti-Semitism. They had to run that at least once in there, as well as all the other stuff, you know. The game wasn't even fucking worth watching anyways, but Bad Bunny's performance, I'm glad it pissed off Esau Edom. See, like everything else though, you know, it's coming out. You know, Esau has been shown to be a liar, and he's coming out for the piece of shit that he always was. So hopefully this has been edifying. Barak the Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatum, Jehovah elect, Shalom.